पॉलिसी बाजार पर 1 करोड़ रुपए का टर्म लाइफ इंश्योरेंस केवल 450 रुपए महीने से शुरू। Wow.
I am now joined by a very special guest, Dr. Najeeb Jung, Distinguished Fellow at Oxford. He's been Vice Chancellor at Jamia. He's currently Chairperson of the Advanced Institute for Asian Studies. Thanks very much for being with us. Do you welcome these moves? Do you think that it actually opens up lots of opportunities for young Indians, a foreign university opening up in India?
Vishnu, we've been struggling for about 2 decades now to have this, to have permission to have foreign universities come to India, or our universities have collaboration with them. So it's a very, very welcome step. In fact, I think in 2005 in the UPA government, they had brought a legislation also to invite foreign universities, but that somehow did not come to fruition. So this, as a decision of the UGC, is indeed a very, very welcome step.
Are you concerned, sir, that the costs might still make it exorbitant for a large number of Indians?
I am not so concerned about the costs at the moment. I am concerned about the content of the policy that the UGC has brought in. I think this should come in as legislation rather than as a UGC policy. But what I read in the papers has caused me some consternation in the way they are going about. If you allow me, I would like to read what I saw in the Indian Express this morning, and I'm reading out to you, which is a very strange statement. It says that, and I quote, the operation of foreign higher educational institutions shall not be contrary to the sovereignty and integrity of India, the security of the state, friendly relations with foreign states, public order, decency or morality. I am not able to understand what they're writing here, because a university is coming in, they are not going to sabotage anything, they are coming for education. So that is a statement that is
so I asked,
drafted by
Dr. Jung, I asked the UGC
servant.
chairperson that question, and I got an answer to that. And their answer is that the UGC welcomes the autonomy of all institutions that comes in over here. On the issue of national interest, it would be the rarest of the rare occasions when the UGC would potentially be involved, and there is always the recourse to the law if anybody has a problem. So that is an answer to that question.
So what you are saying, it's a very interesting reply, because as a foreign university, I am coming here to university, and my legal department back home is actually examining whether I fall into the clutches of the Indian legal system. Every decent university has a very strong legal department. And when I do due diligence and I look at the Indian legal system, I certainly don't want my millions of dollars to come into the clutches of lawyers and advocates and fight the Indian government. So I think that has to be redrawn, and that's a very dangerous clause. I also see a very strange thing, and I heard your interview with Professor Kumar, that they expect universities to be set up in 2 years. In 2 years, you don't acquire land in India.
Yeah.
It takes years. And then the policy says, in years, Mr. Kumar or the UGC or the NAC, I suppose, will revisit these universities to check on what they are doing, on their quality. Now, in 9 years, you hardly set up anything. I mean, you have to set up faculties, you set up laboratories, you set up, you hire faculty, you develop systems. And then in 9 years, the UGC turns up and you are told that, sorry, this is not up to standard, so your millions of dollars are gone, or you get into the legal system. So I really think that while the initiative is brilliant, it is really, really needed in our system today. But this has to be relooked very carefully. And if anything, this has to be brought in through a legislation and not through such orders that have been examined by the UGC.
You
In any
believe that
case,
if
I'm
it's
told
not,
the
you believe
UGC
it
is
could
on
be a
its-
bit ad hoc in the present format, right? Going through the UGC as opposed to legislation which legalizes the autonomy of these institutions.
Yes, I think that this is being pushed through. You see, the Honorable Prime Minister has been very clear that we have to enhance standards of education. And the new education policy is clearly a great effort towards that idea. So if it had to come to fruition, and I think they are rushing this through, it has to be thought through more carefully. Many more universities. Here it also says that they are going to wait for reactions from universities. Now, they should actually have had reactions before they announced this. So they should have called in Delhi University and IIC and the Jamia Millia and the Jawaharlal Nehru University to come and consult with them as they drew up this policy, and in fact consulted with the foreign universities. Vishnu, there's a problem. You see, in India, the system and the desire of the parent as well as the university is to get a child a degree so that he gets a job.
Yes.
The idea of education is not to just get your child a job. The idea of education is to impart knowledge.
Yes.
And therefore, you have spoken of Oxford and Cambridge. They have the tripos system, where you study 3 subjects.
Yes.
In India, you are being asked to do an honors course for the first 3 years. This is in complete divergence to the concept of excuse me, of acquiring knowledge, which is the idea of the first 3 years.
No, but Professor.
So
Professor
those
Jung,
universities.
what I did do is I also asked a question earlier on in the previous interview, and that full one will be playing out at 10 p.m. tonight, where I said that do you welcome the syllabus which will be introduced by these foreign institutions? It might be very different from what you teach over here, or will you be sort of meddling in that? And they said, no, we welcome autonomy, we welcome challenges, we welcome a different a line of thought. And therefore, when you mention tripos, or you mention different styles or different content of education, right? The suggestion is that no, please come in, we welcome it. We welcome divergence and difference. What I find interesting is that on the one hand, you welcome divergence and differences in education, and yet when it comes to our own history textbooks, there is interpretation and reinterpretation, and it certainly follows, a political model. Some say that is not right, some say this is correct. So if there is this, foreign education which is introduced, isn't the worry that it would be questioned?
I think there will be a big struggle. And today, when you struggle to have Romila Thapar, a professor of that standard, teach here, I doubt if you will have free-thinking professors coming in and teaching so boldly. I'm afraid that entire thing has to be rethought. You see, I am really very concerned. You are saying that the foreign university will come and follow our standards. It's to my mind really not possible. It's possible for the sciences.
Yes.
It's hardly likely for the social sciences.
For the humanities and social sciences, it's difficult.
It's hardly likely today.
Correct.
So unless also we introduce, shall I say, winds of liberal thought into Indian education system, rather than tighten our thinking processes as we are doing today, I don't think that these universities will be inclined to come in and burn the shackles. I'll give you an example, Vishnu. When I was at Jamia and there was Professor Dinesh Singh in Delhi University, we introduced the concept of a meta university, which means that students, say, doing mathematics under Dinesh would come and study in the Jamia School of Mass Communication.
Right.
So here you would have a child going out with a mathematics degree and a mass communication degree, and he would be more valuable and he would have knowledge of so many things. Now, it worked while we were there, and it stopped immediately after this because someone had a brain. No, we go back to the classical system. Dinesh tried his best to have this 4-year system. They are coming back to it now. So the time for experimentation is over. Indian education has to open windows of its mind and head and understand that our children are going overseas to acquire knowledge. Are we going to encourage imparting of knowledge as in the classical traditions of Gurukuls, or are we going to be bound by the tradition that we have set in post-partition India, where you acquire a degree and you apply for a job because the economy demanded your child to get a job immediately? The acquisition of knowledge. I mean, how many universities, how many schools are teaching serious philosophy to their children?
Yeah.
It's the mother of language. If
Yes.
you read Will Durant, he says that in his book on the pleasures of philosophy, that the mother of knowledge is not being taught. And I can say that with certainty that it gets the least place in Delhi, in Indian universities. So let's go back to the drawing board. But having said all this, Vishnu, I really welcome the step that is being taken by the UGC. They just need to go back to the drawing board and perhaps redefine some of the parameters under which they are doing.
I think they need to legislate, or the government needs to legislate autonomy in this
Absolutely.
particular context, independence in this particular context, and national interest in this particular context. That those two words are going to potentially be problematic unless it's defined. Unless it's defined, and then universities can decide, if it works or it doesn't work. At the end of the day, it has to be about learning. I agree, sir. It has to be about education.
Which is the university which is working against national interest? How does this idea come into any professor's mind that anybody who comes in, I mean, we are not looking at the Taliban coming and opening universities here. We are looking at Oxford. They have named Oxford and Yale and Cambridge. Are we telling those universities that you better look at India's national interest before you come? They are looking at imparting education. And also, please understand that we so far have non-profit universities. We do not impart education for money. These guys will be sending monies abroad. Will it be out of profit?
It would be, but the government seems to suggest again that that's not a problem. That part they'll open up. Professor Jung, look, it's been a fantastic conversation, as usual, out of time. But thank you so much for raising the larger issues. That it's a great scheme. I think everybody agrees on that. Will it work the way that we want it to work for students to actually have quality, independent, autonomous learning? Would we allow that to actually take place in the way that it is in so many countries around the world? Let's hope that does happen. We'll leave it there. Thanks very much for being with us.